Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Network Automation webinar series. Before we get started, small housekeeping. If you have any queries during the presentation, type them in the Q&A box. We will bring them up at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. Today's session we are going to talk about automation workflows for enforcing configuration compliance. My name is Sunil Kumar Guduru. I'm Senior Product Management Engineer at AppViewX. Let me quickly introduce the company. AppViewX is headquartered in Seattle. We have 7 locations spread across the globe. We focus primarily on NetOps and SecOps teams to help them adapt to the technologies and process demands. We deliver a platform which focuses on managing, automating, and orchestrating network services across brownfield and greenfield deployments. Many of our customers are Fortune 100 and use our platform at scale. Our customer base is spread across different verticals like financial, healthcare, service provider, and retail. So in our today's session, we will go over the need for configuration compliance and how automation can actually enforce configuration compliance. And we will introduce automation workflows. We'll go through a quick demo where we will show how our automation workflows help you enforce configuration compliance in your network. So what is the need of configuration compliance? Configuration compliance actually simplifies the management of complex infrastructures. It also standardizes the growing business processes. With the advent of DevOps, like more and more processes are being spun up, it also helps you to consistently enforce policies across the network and meet internal and external regulatory compliances. It makes you prepared for audits. So what is the challenges on achieving the configuration compliance? The first and foremost challenge is lack of automation. It's impossible to enforce configuration compliance using manual methods. And the second one is lack of visibility. Nowadays, there are a lot of change management tools and automation tools which are actually changing the configurations without our knowledge. So it's hard to track them manually. And most of the teams are working in silos. This only adds to the problem. And the business processes are becoming more and more complex, and achieving configuration compliance is a bit challenging. So how do we achieve configuration compliance? The obvious answer is choosing an automation tool. So the network teams needs to choose a tool which will help them automate their mundane tasks. Once they automate their mundane tasks, it should have a provision to stitch them together so that it can be streamlined to design automation workflows. Once these workflows are designed, they should have control on what is being pushed into the network. So it should have a provision for approvals and log of what it is being pushed. Just in case if it wants to roll back any of these automation changes that it has pushed, it should have a provision to roll back it so that it gets back to the previous state and reduce in the risk. So once you choose a correct automation tool, it will be easy to enforce compliance. These automation tools obviously eliminates manual errors. They could help you streamline the processes and standardize your configurations. So it can work with other compliance tools and integrate with other change management tools. Whenever you're making any changes, you do some checks and balances to ensure that the task has been completed properly. Similarly, with automation tools, we can have pre-validation and post-validation checks implemented to ensure that the automation task has been completed successfully. So once the automation tool has been selected, you can build automation workflows using this automation tool. With these automation workflows, so it will help you self-servicing, freeing up some of the resources to do more engineering and build more automations and integrations, thereby saving the cost. And it also brings agility because of the self-servicing. The workflows will be designed to work optimally, ensuring configuration compliance. AppViewX as a platform provides an automation tool which is called Visual Workflow. Visual Workflow provides an intuitive and a visual system for designing self-serviceable, event-driven, intelligent and automated workflows. It is very easy to design and deploy workflows using this visual workflow. All your service requests can be designed as automation workflows and can be self-serviced using role-based access control. By doing so, you're not only ensuring configuration compliance, but you're also optimizing the cost and resources. So this is how an intuitive Visual Workflow Studio looks like. Using the studio, you can create simple and complex automation workflows with ease. We have automation tasks which can be dragged and dropped onto this Visual Studio and can be stitched to form automation workflows. We have different types of automation tasks which are available for decision making, for approvals, for integrations with tools like ITSM, and for notifications. And we also have few pre-built business logics which can be used. So the NetOps teams and the SecOps teams who are new to automation can leverage these out-of-the-box pre-built logics to build their automation workflows. So using role-based access control, you can control which automation workflows can be requested by which user. It has a very intuitive way to take the inputs. It abstracts the underlying infrastructure and other details by taking simple inputs from the user. So this is how a service request catalog looks like. So all the users can come in over here and they'll be able to see the workflows which are assigned to them. So these workflows can either be scheduled or triggered on demand. I'll be using the term golden configuration. So golden configuration is a configuration version that can be used as a standard configuration for error-free and rapid deployment. So let's see how our golden configuration compliance workflow actually works. So we'll have a demo on this. So just let me explain like how this workflow is supposed to work, and we will see it in action. As I mentioned, AppViewX is a management and automation tool. So once we add the devices into the AppViewX inventory, it parses all the configurations from the devices and stores it in its configuration database. We will have the golden configurations loaded in the collections. Collections is nothing but a user exposed database where the user has the flexibility to change these collections. So once the workflow starts, it will fetch the device configurations from the configuration database and does a compliance check with the golden configurations. So each and every object is compared with the golden configurations. So based on the compliance checks, it would email the compliance report to the admins. If all the configurations are compliant, the workflow stops at that moment. If it is not compliant, then it would generate configurations which will make it compliant. So once the configurations are generated, it would go through a change approval process where all the configuration changes will be approved by the user, and only on approval it will go through a pre-validation, and then the change implementation happens where we actually push the configurations to the devices to make them compliant. And once the configurations are pushed, so we do post-validation to ensure that all the configurations are pushed successfully. So let's quickly jump into the demo. So you see the work instance. So we have a workflow studio. So we have a studio. So in this studio, this is actually where we design the workflows. See here. So these are the workflows, and these are each of them are palettes over here. And everything, this is like a scripted palette which has a logic into it. This is a review palette, configuration generation palette. So this, if you see, this is a workflow, sub-workflow, which internally has a workflow in it. So we can stitch a workflow within a workflow to make it to a complex automation workflows. So let me quickly run this workflow. So just before running it, so it is this request panel that you would see, like what all workflows are already executed. So these dashboards give you an overview of like what are the workflows that have been successfully implemented, like which are still open, what are closed, and what state each of them are in. and how many requests are being requested at different stages of the time. And based on the role-based access control, you would get these requests. So not everybody will have all the requests. So you can control them using the role-based access control. So these workflows can either be scheduled. So they can be scheduled to run periodically, weekly, or daily, or you can run them on demand. So let me run them on demand now. So it creates a workflow. So at this stage, if you see here, we would also understand like what is happening at this stage. So it is actually validating the configuration compliance for all the devices in the inventory. So it's picking up the configurations of all the devices, which is there in the, it's in inventory, database inventory, and it is validating it with the golden configurations. So once it is done, it would actually send an email. So let me open my email. So if you see, there is an email from request ID 28, which we have triggered. And this is the compliance report. Since there is one device only, in this report, we would see like what are the golden configurations. So it is defined over here. And then we would see on this device, like what are the configurations. If it is not compliant, you would see them in red. So most of the configurations are not compliant. Okay. So obviously, since it is not compliant, so it is going for a further. It is creating the scripts for pre-validation, implementation, and rollback. And the post-validation scripts are being actually generated now. And once they are generated, it would need a manual intervention. So this is exactly where you would need them to be reviewed. So if you see the implementation, it is for this device. We are modifying the NTP, SSH, everything over here. And it's also the virtual server. We want it to be HTTPS as per the golden configuration. So it creates all the configurations over here. You could also see the pre-validation, post-validation, and rollback. Just in case if you want to roll back to the original state, we have created the configurations for the rollback also at this stage. So once we click implement, so the implementation would proceed further. So first it would do the pre-validation, like it would check all the pre-validation checks are being done at this stage, and then it will go through the implementation where the actual configurations are actually pushed at this stage, the implementation. And this workflow, we have created it for F5 device, but this can be further customized and built for any network services. It can be a switch, it can be a router, it can be a firewall, anything. And all the checks can be done. In this scenario, we are doing it for ADC. So apart from the management configurations, we are also checking whether the virtual servers are binded to a HTTP profile that we have standardized on, and a persistence method that we have standardized on. So once this workflow is executed, I will show you where the golden configurations are uploaded and how you can change those parameters in the golden configuration. So just for illustration purpose, I've just taken one device, but you can have multiple devices. You can check it across different devices. You can have multiple devices. You can group them into different devices, and as well as you can have different golden configurations for each group of devices. So if you see, the post implementation actually happened over here, and if you see, these are the commands that are actually getting implemented as part of it, and the implementation is completed successfully. and it's going through the post validation. So at any given stage, you can see the configuration, you can see the logs, like what is happening at different stages in each stage. So it is easier to troubleshoot, like if something goes wrong, like you know exactly where it is, what happened, and it's easier to troubleshoot. And you can see the status, so it is completed. So it has gone through all the stages and it has completed. So ideally now the device is compliant. Okay, so if I run this workflow again, so I should get a report saying that everything is compliant. Okay, so let me quickly rerun the workflow. So in the previous stage, we have seen that it has done a compliance check and the report said that it's not compliant. So it gave us the configurations so that it would make it compliant, and we have implemented it. So the device configuration should now be compliant. If it is compliant, it would immediately stop. It will send an email, and it would the workflow would immediately stop. So this is the workflow number 29. Yes, so I got a report for request ID 29, and you see all of them are compliant because the previous workflow has enforced the compliance for all of us. So if you go to the device inventory, so this was the device where we were checking all the configurations. So the device is in managed state. So whenever we add a device to the device inventory, it passes all the configurations. If you see over here, you could see the objects of the ADC device, what version it is, what are the objects in it. If you go to the control center, we could see each and every virtual server and its dependent objects. And our golden configurations are loaded over here, the collections. So collections, if I put it in a simple terms, it's a user exposed database. So you can define the collections, like how you want these collections to be defined. So in this scenario, I have defined the collection. So I wanted a DNS. So I want the DNS IP to be matching this, then NTP IP to be this. And if you come to the profiles, I wanted a HTTP profile with a name HTTP new and persistence with this. So if I want to load a new collection, I could create a new collection or I could either import a new collection. So just to show you how this collection would look like. So this is how I define my collection. Okay, and this is the golden configuration. So these are the parameters and the values associated with it. So I can extend this further. So I can browse through it and then I can upload it. So this collection already exists, so it would not take it. So coming back to the workflow, so these workflows are where you have a out of the box lot of workflows which serve different use cases. Okay, so similar to configuration compliance, you can have a workflow to get all the unused objects. You can decommission them. So let's go deeper into this workflow once. Okay, so if you see in this workflow, the review is being done by AppViewX. Correct. Now, if I want to change this and have ServiceNow integration, so I want all the approvals and everything to be taken care by ServiceNow. I want to raise if there is any mismatch in the configurations as per the golden configuration, and it is not as compliant. I want to raise a ServiceNow ticket, and if there are any changes, I get the change logs in the ServiceNow. So and I want to close on successful implementation. I want to close that ticket. So to do that, first let me clone this. So I can select this and I can clone this. So what I'm ideally doing is I'm taking a copy of this workflow, okay, so that I can add ServiceNow integration. So I'll just say Snow integration for golden configuration. Okay. I can select this as a ADC category, and I can subcategory as compliance, and I save it. So that same workflow is already here. Now I can further enhance this to add ServiceNow integration. So we have different palettes over here. So these are our automation tasks. Like you want to add a grid, you want a comparison, you want a chart, you can just drag and drop and you can populate them. Similarly, if you want ITSM, there is a different create ticket, get ticket, push configuration, everything is in place over here. Similarly, for notifications, we have email and Slack notifications. And we have a store of workflows which are already pre-built business logics are there, which you can leverage them and you can drag and drop these pre-built business logics. So in my cart, I have these subflows, as I mentioned. So this is actually a subflow. If you see here, all these configurations are being actually implemented. Pre-validation, implementation, and post-validation is actually implemented over here. So now the logic that I want to do is I want to create a ServiceNow ticket. So I have a subflow already defined for it. And I want to push the configuration with ServiceNow integration. Correct? So instead of the normal review palette, I will delete this. I want a ServiceNow ticket to be created. So I'll be adding that. Okay. And configurations, this is configurations without ServiceNow integration. So let me delete this and I will add this new workflow, which is configuration push with ServiceNow. And let me join this. Okay. So once we double click on this, you see this subflow where we are actually getting the ServiceNow. We are pushing the configurations which are generated, they are pushed to the ServiceNow. It gets the validation, it waits for the approvals. Once it is approved, it moves forward. And once it is approved, then it goes to the configuration stage where it would validate the state of the whether it is approved or not. If it is approved, it goes to the pre-validation. The pre-validation commands are actually implementation goes through, and based on the implementation's result, we would either close it or close incomplete or close complete. So if the post-validation is successful, we will close complete it. So the ServiceNow ticket is being updated over here. So just by replacing two palettes over here, two subflows, we added ServiceNow integration. So this is as simple. So you can further extend it. It's very customizable. You can write your own logics or you can leverage the pre-existing logics. So this is how we are trying to build a low code, and we'll be providing more and more out of the box business logics which can be leveraged so that your existing network and SecOps teams, they need not have any learning curve. They can leverage most whatever is available out of the box and build their business processes. If still they need to customize something, they could further go ahead and customize it. And as I mentioned earlier, so not only that, they are like a lot of out of the box workflows which are available over here. And we also have a GitHub repository where there is a link to the GitHub repository, which is a shortcut. So we have different repositories over here where you could go over here based on the solution. You can see different automation workflows or use cases which are over here. So these can be imported into the environment. So this is a very flexible platform where it provides you the flexibility to design your own workflows or to use any of these existing workflows and customize them to meet your business needs. So that's it for this from my side. Okay, and if you have any queries, please type them in the Q&A panel. So there's one query over here. Can this workflow enforce configuration compliance on devices spread across private and public clouds? The answer to this is yes. This workflow can enforce configuration compliance on devices spread across different environments like private and public clouds. The only prerequisite is the device should be added in the device inventory and it should be in managed state. As long as the device is reachable, the configuration compliance can be enforced. And moreover, AppViewX is a virtual instance. It can be installed on a Linux or it has a OVA. So it can be installed as a single node or a multi-node. If you are managing devices which are spread across different environments or data centers, it is advisable to deploy nodes nearer to the devices. So in a multi-node, we can have multiple nodes which are nearer to the devices so that it reduces the latency. I hope it answers your query. There's one more query over here. Can we enforce configuration compliance on different types of devices other than load balancers? Yeah, so the answer to this is yes. It is possible to customize this workflow further to support different types of network devices like firewalls, WAFs, switches, routers, and servers. So as I told you, this workflow, not only this workflow, any workflow can be customized to meet your business needs. So the workflow which I showed today is just a reference. It was just for an illustration. So we can have manage different groups. Each group can have a different golden configuration defined to it. We can group them based on the device types or data centers or based on the business units. It's very flexible. It is up to you how you define your logic and define the workflow. So I don't see any further queries in the Q&A. So thank you guys. Thanks for your time. I'm ending the webinar today over here.